delightful chord composer.
So that was Salieri's March from the movie Amadeus. Now, Salieri didn't actually write that initial piece, the one where it goes up to... That was actually written for the movie, but it was deliberately designed to lead into this next part, which is actually a real piece. That comes from The Marriage of Figaro. So it is actually, that second part actually does come from a Mozart composition. It just wasn't composed on the spot the way you saw it in the movie. So when I first heard this song, it was over a year and a half ago, I knew that that was going to be what I thought would be my first recital piece, so to speak. It was the kind of piece where you can actually play that for your friends and family and they'll enjoy hearing it. So, it's not like one of those simple 5-note songs that you see from like a kid's book, but it's actually a real piece. And at, just covering the front and back of a piece of paper, it's pretty reasonable to learn. And I thought it was a good challenge for me, which at the time I was still using a lot of early instructional booklets, so I thought that this would be a good challenge. And I knew that this song was it. I love hearing it. I love playing it. Even now, a year and a half later, I still enjoy playing that song, and I love playing it for people whenever I get the chance. So a little background on when I started learning it. I actually had to simplify the sheet music that I've linked in the description below just a little bit because some of the chords, especially towards the end of the song, were just a little bit too difficult for me to learn at the time. So I had shortened them to intervals and I learned it that way. Interestingly enough though, some of the bigger jumps in the song, like this section right here, for example, or these arpeggios on the left hand, I actually still learned it like that anyways, and it was really difficult. So I don't know why I thought the chords were harder. I don't really remember what was going through my head at the time, but I stuck it out and I learned it anyways, even though it was pretty painful to do so, but I'm glad that I did. I felt like my left hand actually got stronger after the amount of times I had to play this song just to get good at it. And it helped when I learned another Mozart piece, which is K545 Sonata in C major, which is kind of like, typically it's people's first sonata. So I'm glad that I actually did those patterns because it made it easier to learn when I did that song sometime later. So I want to share some tips and tricks that might help you learn this song as well. The first one that I recommend is that you break up the song into segments and learn each of them sequentially. So for example, when you're first starting out with the song, that whole segment all the way up to can be learned entirely on its own. And then when you've mastered that section, then you start learning the next one. And you join all the pieces together until you've learned the entire song from start to finish. I remember that when I first learned this song, it made it a lot more manageable to do it that way than to try and learn the whole thing at once. Another thing that I strongly suggest is that you practice your inversions and chords for C major. Those notes are the backbone of the entire song. So you'll see chords, they show up over and over in the song in different forms. And if you practice those notes and you get familiar with them, it'll help you learn the song a whole lot better. I want to call attention to the section at the end where you have to play the triplets, starting right here. That section is deceptively difficult because you have to sync up your hands perfectly while playing it, and for me, that was really challenging. If you're more experienced at the piano, it might not be so bad, but for me, I had to spend a long time working on that, and even then, I was still messing it up constantly, and it took quite a while and a lot of practice before I was able to consistently get it right. So, something to remember with that is that the notes follow the same pattern as they're the same notes, just played differently, as I'd mentioned before. So practice that real slowly and work on syncing up your hands together. And over time, as you practice more, you'll naturally get the notes right anyways. So the focus really shouldn't be on trying to get the notes right, but rather to make your hands sync up correctly. Even now, I still struggle with this a little bit. I also want to call attention to some of these big jumps right here and here. Those are intimidating, especially since you have to sync up your 16ths as well. That I had to play that real slowly in order to kind of sync up the notes correctly in my mind. And I was staring at the sheet music, and I'm not and still not very good at reading it. So that was a challenge for me. But having to play that 16th note that starts right before that's something that can kind of trip you up too, which is why I recommend you play it really slowly and gradually work up to the full speed. You'll eventually get it, but it is challenging to sync up those two things together without making any obvious errors. And finally, I want to discuss the chords near the end of the song. So where it starts at this point, these chords are all inversions. So you can actually see that right here too, here, here. It's all the same kind of thing. And the difficult part of it to learn isn't the chords. They're not the chords themselves, but rather playing them at full speed. Now, the sheet music that I had originally seen for this had all chords throughout. And while it is possible to do that, it's really difficult to do that, a little bit unreasonable. So on this sheet music, I actually simplified a few of them so that that's not really the case anymore. So like here, when you're going off the 16th notes, and on here as well, I changed those to intervals or 2 notes, so it's much easier for you to transition into that. And I notice it doesn't really affect how it sounds when you're actually playing it. Sometimes I'll play it with, I'll transition straight into chords anyways, but if that's too difficult, just play it like that, and you'll find that it's a lot easier to do. Originally, when I was learning the music, I actually cut out the chords altogether, and I recently went back and relearned the song because it had been so long since I first put together the sheet music for it that I forgot that I ever did that. But it honestly sounds a lot better with the chords. So if you really want to try and learn the full song, learn it with the chords. But otherwise, if you just learn it with intervals, it still sounds great as well. So that's pretty much everything that I have for this song. Really, it's ultimately going to come down to a lot of practice, but some of those tips might help you learn the song a little bit quicker. It's really reasonable to learn as well. Since it's only 2 pages long, you can probably learn it in an afternoon if you're more experienced, or maybe a few days if you're less experienced and you're wanting to find something new to challenge yourself with. This is a great song to play for friends and family. It never really fails to disappoint either. And plus, you get to pretend that you're Mozart humiliating Salieri for a second, so, there's a little fun with that too. But that's pretty much all I have for this video. Thank you for watching, and like and subscribe if you want to see more. Again, I have linked the sheet music below in the description. I've got the simpler version and the full version, both linked if you want to try your hand at either of them. So thank you for watching, and I'll see you guys soon.